Today in our 2014 Ford F-150, we'll be installing the Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 air helper springs, part number AL57200. The Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 springs will help you maintain the factory ride height when you have up to 5,000 pounds of weight in the bed of your truck. You do not want to exceed the manufacturer's recommended weight limit on your vehicle. When you have the airbags installed, they will help reduce tire wear on your vehicle and help maintain braking ability. When your vehicle is sitting level, your brakes work properly. They will also help maintain stability of your truck while you're driving down the road and help maintain your headlight aiming so you don't blind vehicles coming to you. They have adjustable air pressures that range from 5 to 100 psi. Alright, so here's what our airbag kit looks like installed on one side of our vehicle. We're on the passenger side here for reference. We are missing our heat shield. We have yet to install that, but we just wanted to give you an idea of what our airbag looks like once we have it all put together and bolted onto the vehicle. One nice thing about this airlift kit that we have here today is the fact that it will work with some versions of gooseneck hitches. As you can see, we have our bracketry here for our gooseneck hitch, and there's plenty of clearance between our upper frame bracket for our airbag that does not interfere with the gooseneck at all. Okay, we're going to start off our installation by getting a couple measurements here of our truck at factory ride height with factory suspension and no weight in the bed, just so we have a reference point to compare it to once we have weight in it and once we have the springs installed. So through the center line of our rear wheel to our fender, we're right at 39.5 inches. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll compare the front too. We're right at 37.5 in the front. So we'll write these numbers down and we'll have them as a comparison. But now we're gonna go put some weight in the bed of the truck and see what the numbers change to. Okay, now we have a fair amount of weight in the bed of our truck where we take our measurements. So we've dropped down 3.5 inches. From the front, we rose about an inch. Okay, with our airbags inflated up to about 65 psi and our weight replaced back in the bed of our truck, we'll double check our measurements and see if we're at factory ride height again. We're sitting right at 39.5 inches in the rear. So we regained the distance that we lost when the weight was added. So our truck is now sitting like a factory suspension truck with no weight in the bed. Now our front is about 37.75, so it's very close to where it was before on a factory suspension with no weight added. And now we'll show you what it looks like on our test course. On the left side of your screen, you will see what it's like going down the test course with the load with the factory suspension. As you notice, when we go over bumps, how unstable it is, and when we're going around in corners, you can see how much body roll there is and how unstable it is as well. On the right side of the screen, you'll see what it looks like with the airbags installed. As you'll notice, there's much more stability around corners, less body roll, less jostling when we're going over bumps, and it provides a much smoother ride, also while maintaining our heavy load in the bed of our truck, giving us a factory-like ride, not knowing that the weight is back there. Okay, here's what our kit consists of. Right here is our heat shield, which will go for the passenger side. We have 2 clamps to attach it and the heat shield itself. Here's all of our frame bracketry that attaches our spring itself, our 2 cups that the spring sits into, our hardware to attach it all. We have our hose, which already has our fittings onto it to connect with. Our attachment hardware for the hose, these will thread on to our fill fittings, and we can use these to attach them on any flat surface on the vehicle we like. Most of the time we go by the license plate in the back bumper. We have a couple zip ties to help secure our airline tubing. And we have some heat sheathing here to go over our airline to help protect it by any place where it comes close to the exhaust. Now that we've gone over what's included, we'll show you how to install the driver's side in our vehicle. Okay, we'll take our one bracket here. This is the lower bracket that wraps around our axle. We'll take this plate, stick it over the studs. We'll take 2 flat washers, install them, and 2 nylon lock nuts. Tighten these down a little bit. and then we'll torque them to the amount specified in the instructions. Take our airbag, we'll flip it over where our air fitting is. We'll drop on one of our cups. We'll grab our bracket, slide it on over. Take our flathead Allen bolts, thread those on in. Snug these down. And we'll torque those to the amount specified in the instructions. Now we're screwing our fitting. These you just screw down until the thread seal will engage. Okay, that's good. Okay, now we can remove our factory bump stop right here. Let's use a 13mm socket. Okay, you can just set that aside. We will not be reinstalling these, but you can keep them if you want to take your airbags off. Now we'll take our bracket here. You notice our bracket has an L on it, which means left. Left is always the driver's side. We'll slide it into position and we'll bolt it in place where the bump stop was using one of these bolts here and a flat washer. Get it started by hand a few turns. Okay. When we tighten it down, we want to make sure that it's as tight against the frame as possible. And we'll torque it to spec. Now we'll bolt our air spring assembly up to our upper bracket using these carriage bolts here. They'll come up from the bottom. The bolt will go through our bracket in the frame. We'll have a nut, or we'll have a flat washer on top, and then a nylon lock nut. You drop your washer on down, then your nylon lock nut goes on. Do the same for the front bolt. Then we can tighten those bolts down to specification. Okay, the front bolt we could get our socket on fairly easily and tighten it up. This back bolt with this brake line and wiring harness in the way, it's a little bit more difficult. So we'll pry the wiring harness off the frame. That'll give us some clearance to get in there for a socket. All right, now that we have these tight, we can torque them to spec. We can reclip our wiring harness back in the frame, just push it in place. Okay, now we'll slide our lower bracket in place on top of our axle that we pre-assembled. This part here will get sandwiched in between our U-bolts that hold our leaf spring to our rear axle. And this part here will sit right here, right next to this bracket for our brake lines and our ABS wires. So come up from the front, raise it in position, push up, and as you can see, it sits right up in there like it's supposed to. Okay, now we can drop down our long carriage bolts. On our driver's side, we're using the inner hole here. Now we'll take our clamp bar, place a flat washer onto it, and a nylon lock nut. Now that we've tightened up a little bit, we'll torque them down to specs. Okay, now we'll slide our plate into place underneath our airbag, making sure our airbag sits in this recessed cup section of it. Just like that. Now we'll take one of our short bolts, a lock washer, and a flat washer. And we will bolt our plate to our airbag assembly. And get that started, we'll get the second bolt in place too. Okay, now that we got all of our bolts started, we can tighten them down. And we'll torque them to the amount specified in the instructions. Now if you have your vehicle frame raised off the ground a little bit, you can lower it back down. Now we'll take our heat shield, bend the tab in like this on both sides. We'll go about halfway and bend it like that. Now we can clamp our heat shield to our tailpipe. So we're going to put this on our tailpipe in a position where it will provide the most protection from the heat. Right about in this area here seems to be the most important spot. So we'll bend it like so. Kind of angle it in position as needed. Right about there will offer us the most protection. So we can clamp it in place using the provided hose clamps. We have our hose clamp here. As you can see, we have already undone it. Slide it under our exhaust and we'll get it clamped back a little bit, just enough so it doesn't fall apart on us. Okay, we'll slide it up. Do the same for the second one. Slide that one up. Take our heat shield. We'll snug them on up. Okay, now our heat shield's in place and it will protect our airbag from any heat that may come from our exhaust. Now this ABS wire here, as you can see, it's kind of close to chafing up against our driver's side airbag. So what we're going to do is we're going to secure it to these brake hoses here with a zip tie, just to help pull it away from there and give us some extra clearance. Just like that, it'll be perfect. Now we'll cut off our excess zip tie. Okay, now we can start plumbing our air line to the back of our truck so we can fill up our airbags with air. You may notice that our airline tubing is shipped to us with both ends with our nipples attached so we can air up our airbags with the Schrader valves. Now, we will be installing a compressor later on in this vehicle, and our compressor is a single stage, which means you can't fill up each airbag independently. So we're going to cut one of these nipples off and use a T-fitting and tie both airbags together with this T-fitting and have one line running to the rear of our vehicle for the nipple. That way we can still fill them up manually if we have a compressor failure. I put a couple hose loom clamps up on our bottom bed support just so we have something to hold our airline tubing in place. We have those available for purchase on our website. I'm going to take our airline with the end that we have cut off, come above where our spare tire is, and go through two of these looms, and then come towards the back to our airbag on the driver's side. And then I'll plug our line into the fitting on the airbag. These are push connect fittings, so you just push the line in, you pull back on it, it's not going anywhere. If you need to release it, you just push down on the fitting and it will come off. Now we'll take our airline tubing here, right above our spare tire holder, and we'll cut it right in the middle using our tubing cutter. We'll slide it in position, and trim it. Take our T-fitting, push on our hose, pull back, make sure it's secure. Now we'll take the end of our tubing that doesn't have the fitting on it, go up through our spare tire opening again, through our loom clamp here and this one here, and we'll go towards our passenger side airbag. We'll take our sheath, slide it over the end of our tube, and we'll connect our passenger side airbag now. And we'll slide our sheath down so it protects our air line from the exhaust. Now with both of our airbags connected, we can now take our line, measure off about how much we're going to need, and cut off the excess. And we'll plug it into our T-fitting. Just like so. Now our airbag are tied together, and we'll have one line running to the back of the truck where we can inflate them. Okay, now we need to find a place to put our inflation valve. Again, since we're putting a compressor in this vehicle, we're only going to have one inflation valve. If you weren't and you wanted to air your bags up independently, you'd be drilling 2 holes, one for each airbag, and you wouldn't have the T-fitting. So I'm going to go right here to the left of our license plate at the top of it. I've already verified there's nothing behind it that we're going to drill into. We're going to drill a 5/16 inch hole. Now we'll screw one of our hex nuts onto our fittings. Just down there. Place a star washer onto it, like so. Come up from behind our bumper, place it through the hole. We'll place a rubber washer on it and a flat washer. And then another nut. And we'll grab a socket and we'll tighten this front nut up. We don't need to go super tight on this, just snug it up so it won't fall off. Okay, there's good. Now we have a nice solid connection point to fill our airbags up with. And we even have a valve cap that we can screw on to keep the elements out of it. And now we'll take our air hose, go up and over our spare tire holder, and we'll pull it on towards that position. Right about here is where we're going to need it. So we will trim off our excess hose. We'll plug it into our T-fitting right here. And now we have a single connection point to inflate both airbags. Okay, now we're going to put a little bit of air in our system and check for leaks. Okay, we have about 35 pounds of air in our system now. We'll spray everything down, every fitting and connection, with some soapy water and check for bubbles. If we see bubbles, that means we have a leak. Okay, now that we've verified that we have no leaks, if we want to take air out of our system, we can just press in on the Schrader valve and let air out. If you want to put air in, just hook it up like you would your tire. You want to air it up in short bursts because these do air up really quickly and you don't want to overinflate the airbags. And that completes our installation of the Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 air helper springs, part number AL57200 on our 2014 Ford F-150.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.